Hello, I'm Johnny Thornellis, and I'm going to be covering the deadlift. As a power lifter, the deadlift is one of my favorite exercises. Um, it's one lift that we have to do in order to compete. Now, covering the deadlift, I'm going to target the muscle groups, how to deadlift, and a little bit of form. Now, if the deadlift done wrong, you can lead to a lot of injuries, such as pulled bicep, strained back. You can crush a disc, slip a disc. There's a lot of things that can go wrong if you don't execute the deadlift correctly. Now, getting into the deadlift, first things first is you want to make sure you have flats. You don't want to deadlift in running shoes, basketball shoes. You can deadlift in Sperry's as long as it's flat and there's not a lot of cushion. Really, barefoot is the ideal way of lifting, but you gotta wear shoes to compete and stuff like that. So, getting into the deadlift, we're gonna cover probably grips first. So when we pull, there is under over, where this arm and this arm, depending which is more comfortable, will be under over. Now, of course, you're gonna have your double over, and then we're gonna have something called hook grip. Now, if you come close, you'll see on a hook grip, what I want to do is I'm hooking my thumb through. Now, all I'm doing is tucking my thumb and pulling over with the rest of my hand. And it's going to be the same thing on both sides. Now, this can cause a lot of pain and stress on that thumb. So it takes time to adjust and get used to that. Is really one of the safest ways to pull, because you're gonna take away from that bicep, and of course your shoulders being straight unless from under over, because when you're under over, you can have some shift up top. It doesn't really happen a lot, but there's still that chance. Now, getting into the deadlift with conventional, feet placement is going to be one thing you kind of have to play around with. If you look at a lot of people in the strongman, they're big guys, so they're a lot wider. That's in order for them to still activate their hips through. It almost looks like a modified sumo. Now, of course, depending on your height and the size of your torso, femur, glutes, stuff like that, it's kind of determine how wide or close you should be. Now, I'm 5'11", so I'm not that tall, but about average. So I'm a little bit close. That's just because where I feel most comfortable at, right? Also, the muscle target groups. So whenever we do this deadlift, what we're targeting is our abdominals, glutes, hamstrings, abductors, traps, lats, rhomboids, and your lower back. So, getting into the deadlift, I want to have a flat back. Now, when I say flat, I don't mean just straight from here and pulling up. You want to, first thing is you want to load your hamstrings, squeeze your lats back tight, almost like you want to, there's something behind you and you want to crush it, because you want your chest to be up. Now, if I'm bent over and slouched, it's going to be nothing but lower back. But if I tuck and pull and come up, it's going to be nothing but glutes and legs. So I want to drive with my heels, fire my hips through as I come up. Right? So when it comes to a lockout, you don't want to overdo the lockout, because then you can shoot your disc through. That's when it's real important stuff like this, a belt comes through. It takes a lot of pressure off that lower back and allows you to lift a little bit more. And you're not going to get a hernia. So with the conventional deadlift, you want to find a good feet placement. I like to kind of spread the floor. Now, when I say spread the floor, I do the same thing when I squat, and also do the same thing to a sumo deadlift, where I kind of act like I'm standing on two plates, and I want to spread those plates apart. I want to make sure I keep my knees out. So whenever you pull, there's some people, especially as a new lifter, your knees kind of come inward, especially if you see someone that's never squatted before, squat for the first time, their knees buckle in. They don't have any strengths. Their hips are weak, glutes are weak, stuff like that. So I want to make sure I'm spreading the floor. I'm going to engage my lats, keep my chest up, and fire my hips through. So, tight back, straight back, chest up, hips through. And that's the deadlift. All right, and now we're going to cover the sumo. Now, the sumo and conventional are very similar. Of course, they're going to have their differences. With the conventional, you're going to target more your lower back and hamstrings, versus sumo, where it's going to be more hips and glutes. All right, so one thing with the sumo, I like to call it getting squared off, because I want to kind of create a 90-degree angle in my legs. Now, same thing, you want to find good feet placement, kind of, some people go really wide, some people a little bit more close. With the sumo, make sure your hands are inside the legs. So when you get into the sumo, one thing you really want to focus on, this is a very technical lift, right? Because there's not really a lift you can kind of just muscle up naturally like conventional deadlift. You kind of muscle those things, you kind of get out of technique when you get into heavier lifts. But with sumo, it kind of transverses into stuff like a squat. So once it gets squared off, spread the floor, good feet placement, and all I'm doing is just squatting down. So you want to make sure you have the flexibility enough to do this lift as well, because it's going to be a lot of tension on your hips, especially as a new lifter. So getting into the sumo, I'm going to go double over. I'm going to square off, and I want to sit back. So I kind of start off here, so I can just sit back and find where I need to be. As soon as I get where I need to be, that bar already wants to come off the ground. So all I'm going to do is sit back and fire my hips through. From this position here to this position here. Making sure my knees don't cave in. I'm spreading them out. I'm keeping my lats tight and my chest up. That's pretty much the sumo.